jump on and kind of call in, and you can ask questions that way. So I know people are still filing in. I see a couple of familiar faces, and we obviously have some guests coming on too. So nice to see the familiar faces and the familiar names, and welcome to some of our newer guests joining us. For those of you who kind of haven't tuned in with us before, basically what this time is all about is really bringing a person, what I call an expert, somebody who has some type of expertise in a certain field, and kind of bringing them on to really share some of their experience, some of their background, some of their expertise in various fields. We've covered a lot of different topics. We've covered leadership, we've covered spirituality, we've covered business, we've covered entrepreneurship. So just a lot of different stuff here. And today we're actually very lucky that we have somebody who covers a wide range of topics and is kind of one of those people that I consider an expert in several different fields. So I won't give a huge introduction, but I'll ask him to kind of call in right now. And while he's calling in, I will just kind of introduce on an informal level Brian McFadden. I got in touch with Brian McFadden through a friend a few months ago, and we were going through some organizational changes, and so he's calling in. So I'm just gonna let him call in right now and bring him on while I'm talking here. And so I kind of got in touch with Brian through a friend, and I was actually headed out to Los Angeles, where Brian and this friend were based, and we were going through a lot of organizational changes at the time. And, we were coming up with a lot of new content and kind of re-looking at different things in terms of strategic vision and mission and stuff like that. And so one of my buddies said, hey, you got to talk to Brian McFadden. He said, you got to go meet with Brian McFadden. So I went and met with Brian, and really I built a friendship with Brian on top of kind of the knowledge that he shared with me. But Brian's one of those people that can really drop a lot of knowledge on a lot of different things. So that's why we didn't want to limit this time with him to just talking about one thing, but hopefully we can cover a wide range of topics. And if there's something that people online want to hear about, feel free to type it in a message, ask a question, kind of raise your hand or whatever, and we can kind of get through it. But with that, I'll kind of kick it over to you, Brian, and just kind of welcome you and maybe ask you to share a little bit about yourself and kind of a little bit about your background.
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Steve, for having me on. Double check my sound. Am I okay? Good.
Very good.
I'm honored to be here. I love sharing ideas. And so with that, I guess I'll just kind of do the chronological scope of where I've been and where I am now. Currently living in Orange County, California, in Ladera Ranch. I'm married to my wonderful wife, Charlie, and we have a fur baby, Hank. He's a 3-year-old boxer, so he keeps us busy. And so growing up, grew up in Long Beach, went to Baker High School locally, then I went into play college basketball at a small school in Irvine, Concordia University. I got hurt the end of my sophomore year, and for about 6 months there was kind of a void there. Basketball was my life up until that point, and then it got taken away, and it was one of those moments where I had to figure out what was next. I was used to physical activity, obviously, given my background with athletics, and so I decided to pick up a barbell. About 6 months after I couldn't play basketball anymore. And that was 2004, 2005. And I kind of cannonballed into fitness. It kind of replaced my my thirst for physical activity because I couldn't play basketball anymore. So I just trained by myself about 2 years, got really into it. Then I started training people in my brother's garage, just as a hobby. At the time, I was bartending as a job. I invited some buddies over to my brother's garage, and within those 2 years, there was probably about 20 to 30 people that I was quote unquote personal training. And that was the point when it was like, okay, I think this can be something. From there, I did all the certifications, got qualified to be a personal trainer, opened up a gym with a friend of mine, did that for about 4.5 years, group classes, personal training, all that. And up until these last 2 years, I've been a staff writer for Tiger Fitness, kind of covering the same topics I dealt with as a personal trainer and group class instructor and whatnot. Throughout my journey, however, kind of layering the introduction, I've been writing about things that transcend a little bit outside of fitness. And that's why the topic is a little bit broader than sets, reps, and sweat today. And on my personal blog, I write about health, human performance, and happiness, a couple verticals that I thought were integrative to quote-unquote fitness or personal training. I'm a certified strength coach, certified nutrition coach, and a certified holistic health counselor as far as credentials go. And that's where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, I think, kind of when I kind of understood your background and kind of learned more about you, you talk about health, human performance, and happiness.
Yeah.
And I think because, like you're saying, that you kind of have this broad range, I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is balance. Yeah. In the sense of, you talk about fitness, and fitness is very important, but then you also talk about health, which is, fitness is an aspect of, but then there's health. Then, you talk about, human performance and leadership. So I think what a lot of people like us kind of struggle with on a day-to-day basis is, how do we find the balance in our life? How do we not go overboard with just focusing on fitness, or just focusing on health, or just focusing on leadership or success, or academic success or professional success? How have you been able to kind of find balance in your life? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of us are asking that very question. And I think it's a little dynamic. Obviously, it's a case-by-case scenario. And especially in like the fitness and working with people one-on-one and training them, the topic came up all the time, because obviously, unless you're a professional athlete or even an amateur aspiring to be professional, fitness is an additive aspect to life. You don't necessarily have all the time, the resources, or sometimes the desire to go to the gym 5, 6, 7 times a week. We have lives outside of the gym, a mortgage, rent, social lives, church, whatever it is. And so I dealt with that a lot on the front end of personal training. And then in my own life, it was like kind of balancing, several different projects or different jobs at one time while maintaining, a healthy marriage and all that. So balance is something I kind of look into for me, and I just share what I find on the topic. And the best way I can explain this in terms of having an actionable takeaway is a story or metaphor. So think of, if I had a jar here, and then like a couple big rocks, and then a small bag of sand. Now, if I put the rocks in first into the jar, I can then pour the sand in, and the sand will find its way into the crevices and fill itself up to the top. However, the opposite doesn't quite work the same way. If I put the sand into the jar up to the brim first, I can't fit the big rocks into the jar. And so in our lives, I think fitting the big rocks into your day first is the most important thing we can do. Because if we start with the small, tedious, mundane activities or chores, then we're going to get to, 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and be like, man, I just don't have energy, room, or resources to get to the most important things. So I think balance on a macro level looks like that. And you can call it the big rock method. That's what I call it. Mm-hmm. And so underneath that, I've kind of developed something for myself that people can use as well. It's called the 5-3-1 method. And so at the end of the day, I list the 5 things that must get done the following day. and then 3 things I did well today, and then 1 thing I'm grateful for. And so this kind of weaves in my to-do list for tomorrow, so I don't have to think about it when I go to sleep. And then 3 things that you did well today is just kind of like a self-esteem aspect. And then 1 thing you're grateful for is obviously given. Kind of gets us in that gratitude state of mind. So I think it's general enough that we can all use it, and then you can kind of plug it into your own life. But big rocks first. I think that's the best picture of balance for all of us across, job, title, or position.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I always look at the differentiation between urgent and important.
Yeah.
And, I feel like that sand, a lot of times, it's almost quicksand because it's urgent. It's the, stuff that needs to get done. And oftentimes, if we, spend too much time in that quicksand, you look 5 years down the road and you say, I missed out on the important stuff that I wanted to do, all the things I really wanted to accomplish.
Right.
So those big rocks are really those important things, those passion things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a great segue into, the back end question to that is, well, what are my big rocks? And that's another question to tackle too. That takes some inner work and some exploring, but starting there, like identifying what the most important things are to you, and then just labeling those, chalk them up as your rocks, and then do those every day.
Yeah. And so before I transition, I just want to let people know, if you do have a question for Brian, feel free to message it in, or you can call in and actually jump on camera. Some people like the 15 seconds of fame, so we can kind of pull you up. But feel free to just call in as we're speaking, and I can kind of bring you on. But let me ask you a personal question, because I see my wife is on here. Okay, so let me ask you. Okay, because you're a health guy. Okay.
Okay.
And so let me ask you, what does it mean to be healthy? Because I'm in the school of, if I go to the gym for an hour, I'm allowed to eat a cheeseburger for the next hour. So, I know that's a broad question, but what does healthy look like on a physical level, but also on kind of a holistic level? Because I think a lot of people struggle with all types of health. Physical is generally kind of that first line of defense that people see. But as a health professional, what do you consider healthy on a physical level as well as on other levels?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first part of that question is what kind of gets people in the door, the physical aspect or the aesthetics aspect of fitness. And honestly, I've worked with ranges of different people and coming in with different goals. A 24-year-old male who is training to compete in the CrossFit Games is going to have a different perspective and reality around what his physical body should be able to do and look like versus a 37-year-old mom with 2 kids who just wants to look better. So I've come to learn that I really try and practice putting the person first and the theory second. The other way around, I've learned the hard way, kind of pigeonholes people into believing one thing. And when it comes to fitness, the spectrum is so wide that as a trainer, coach, or influencer, I think it's our job to put people first. So when you ask me, what does it look like physically, it really depends on the person. So if someone is using fitness as sport, let's say they want to do a bodybuilding show or a physique show or a bikini show, what they think is healthy physically is going to look a lot different than someone who just wants to look a little bit better or lose 10 pounds. So it depends. I know that's not the answer a lot of people want, but it depends. But it puts you first as a client or someone that you're working with. The backside of that question, what does health look like holistically? I think it's a little more linear. So I think there's a 4-part system that I kind of have stamped to and kind of adhere to when I talk to people or coach them. And it's sleep, eat, move, and live. So those 4 pillars in that order, work through pragmatically, I think offer a great look at health for anyone across the board. If you want to take it further, like I referenced earlier, if you're an athlete, those 4 pillars are still crucial, but you can expand on that and go further. But I think for everyone, these 4 pillars is a starting point.
I'm sorry, when you say sleep,
yeah,
what does that entail besides actually sleeping?
Right, that's a great question. The reason why it's first is because lack of sleep is kind of the large player in your hormonal environment. So sleep deprivation kind of goes into cortisol levels, testosterone, estrogen. The thing you need to know is that if you're chronically sleep deprived, your hormones are out of whack, which makes the best training program, the best diet, almost obsolete because your hormones are out of whack. So just some off the thought things. Sleep deprivation has been compared to people being drunk. So if you don't get enough sleep for about a week, your blood alcohol levels are akin to someone who's been drinking. So your reaction time, creativity is off. Unethical work behavior, believe it or not, has been shown in sleep deprivation. So you're not only suffering, but you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position to make bad decisions at work when you don't sleep enough. Mental sharpness, productivity goes down. So it's kind of like a snowball effect. Once that starts, we're talking more than just, body composition. It kind of bleeds into every other area of your life. So that's why I like to start with it. Sleep is number one.
And how many hours should a person be sleeping a night?
Yeah, the general answer is obviously ideally 2 is 7 to 9 hours. Now I know some people are going to be like, yeah, right, dude. Based on the season of your life, the job, or the kids. But the point is to do the best you can. I'd like to say, if that's not possible for you, I think improving the quality of the amount you're currently getting is the next best step. So a few takeaways there. 30 minutes before you go to bed, shut down your tablets, phones, and TVs. So the light that these screens produce disrupt melatonin, which is a sleepy hormone. So your brain thinks like, oh man, it's still daytime, I need to be alert and stay awake. So when you get into bed, it takes, an hour, 2, 3 hours to go to bed. And it will largely be due to the fact that you're exposed to light. Second quick thing. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if you see the question on the bottom right, but that's from my wife, and that's a loaded question, okay? And you're kind of already answering it, but that's
right.
Loaded. Be careful, okay?
Right, yeah. So the screen, tablets, and TVs, at least 30 minutes before you go to bed. Second tip is keep your room cool. And now I know this will vary. Some people like it warmer, some like it colder, but too warm can actually wake you up at night, disrupting the quality. To-do lists, when you write stuff down for the next day, it can relieve stress levels. So that way you're not trying to think about what's going to happen the next day. You have it somewhere where you can reference the next day. And keeping your room dark. The most practical way is a sleep mask, or if you want to get crazy, get the blackout curtains. So those 4 things, your technology use, the temperature of the room, your to-do list, write it down, and then keeping your room dark. I think those 4 things are 4 good takeaways to get better sleep each night.
Brian, I got to rethink inviting you on the blog here, okay? You're proving my wife right here, okay? She's always yelling the laptop at night. I'm going to get an earful tonight.
Just baby steps. Start baby steps. That's all.
But so now let me just change subject so I can kind of get out of the doghouse here. You have a blog, and actually while you answer this question, I'm going to try a feature that I think is new on Blab, which is posting a link to your blog. I'm going to try to post it here so people can see it. But you wrote an article recently, and I'm going to put up the link if people want to follow you and kind of read more about your blog. But you wrote an article about how you learned a leadership lesson from your dog.
Yeah.
And so can you kind of share about that a little bit? What was that all about? And just so people know, on the bottom left of your screen should be a link to Brian's blog that you can access at any time.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share that. One quick note on that address there, Steve. Let's go ahead and put in brianedwardmcfadden.com.
Okay.
Just so we're directing people to the right site.
Okay. I got you.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, so I wrote a post. My dog name is Hank, so if I reference him here, you'll know who he is. It was a weekday, and I was going about my typical task and routines. And what I usually do, since I'm a writer, I take breaks about every 90 minutes. And sometimes it's going downstairs for a drink of water, listen to a song, whatever it may be. But on this particular day, I went downstairs, and Hank was taking a nap, and he heard me come down, and he got up, and he followed me around. I think that day we went outside for a walk. When we get to a corner stop, when I tell him to sit, he sits. We walk back. I tell him to stay downstairs. He stays. All this stuff. And the takeaway was I noticed that Hank has an unconditional followership towards me. I'm the leader in that relationship, and he submits and he follows without question. Not to over dramatize that, but it ties into this point of us as humans, myself, for example. I've been a follower in other relationships in my life, as an employee, as a teammate, as a player. And I've noticed that in those seasons, it's important for me to be the best follower I can be while leading myself in the pursuit. And the irony in this is I've just sensed not a shift, but an undertone of that everyone, especially the up and coming people, millennials, 25 to 35 type-ish age, should be leaders in the sense of they need to start a company, they need to start a nonprofit, they need to be the A-type behavior, the driver, and basically dominate the world. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people who are suited for that, and we need those type of people, but it cannot be everyone. We need great followers to not only support these leaders, but also to lead ourselves, because I think there's a great value in valuing followership, and I don't think that's getting preached a lot these days, especially in the workforce. And so tying that back into Hank as my dog, he really brought this lesson up for me. I didn't see it until I saw his behavior, and then I tied it into my life and hopefully a few others through my writing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I didn't read this article. I was kind of looking at it, and there is a TED Talk. It's about a 3-minute TED Talk about how to start a movement. I don't remember. Have you seen it?
I haven't, but it sounds great.
I'm going to send it to you when we're offline. It's and those who are on, you should look it up. It's on TED Talks. It's a great talk about how to start a movement, and what it does is it actually de-emphasizes the role of a leader in a movement, and it actually glorifies the first follower, and it does it in a very satirical kind of way. But the whole concept is that first follower really goes out on a ledge and kind of steps out on a ledge and takes a risk to follow a leader. And that first follower is crucial to building a movement and developing other followers. So he's saying, like, the world would be so inefficient if everybody was a leader. Okay, and we look at it a lot of times is, I'm not happy at my job, so what do? I go start a different company, right? And so if the world is just a bunch of people leading without anyone following, then it's a pretty inefficient world. So I like that a lot. We need great followers just as we need great leaders.
Right. We need both. It's important to emphasize that for sure.
And the characteristics are like you're saying, are very different.
Yeah.
The loyalty of a follower, the obedience, the sacrifice, the humility is crucial to a follower. So I'm going to send you that when we finish.
Yeah, send me that. I'm interested to watch it.
You also, I don't know if you wrote this other article, but you tweeted something about boredom recently, and you were tweeting it about boredom in the sense of being a good thing.
Yeah. So this reminds me. I forgot who wrote it or who tweeted it, but it said, "Whatever a writer writes about is what they're struggling with," and I think that's very true. And so I struggle with distraction and focus, and that's pretty much why I tend to write a lot about it. And so the article, I think it was published in The Guardian, and I just retweeted it, but the summary of that article is that we're too busy to be bored anymore. And the first thing that came to my mind was, think of a beautiful song that you like. And now think of that song with no empty space or empty noise. If it was just one monotonous sound, it wouldn't be as beautiful, right? And so I think we've filled our lives up so much that there's no space to be bored. And so they say the space between the notes makes the music type of thing. I think the space between our activities makes a life. And we've kind of, like, the ease of distraction is so close that every corner of our life is filled with something, whether it's actually being productive or it's just like getting on Twitter or checking email again. It's just one monotonous like flow of always doing, and we no longer know what it means to be bored anymore. And obviously, you know, Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." I think it's an important skill to know how to be bored, because in that time we can reflect, we can pray, we can meditate, whatever that time is spent for you. I think we need to like recapture that, because if we don't, I mean, the world's not going to do it for us.
And you know, and I see Kendra's question. I'm gonna kind of get to that question. Actually, somebody was just calling in, Peter. I think he was having a little trouble, but you're welcome to call back in. We always get one or two brave soldiers willing to ask a question on video. But actually, he's calling in now, so I'm gonna see if we can connect him in. Hopefully, it works. And I forgot my train of thought, and I was going to say something, but hopefully Peter is on, but I don't see him. I'm assuming you don't see him either. There you go. Hey, Peter, how are you? We're having some connection issues. I don't think we can hear you. Brian, you can hear him, right?
I can.
Yeah, I'm not getting anything, right?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Okay. Sorry, Peter. If you want to type your question or give it one more shot, we got a 3 strikes policy here. But you were talking about the whole the stillness thing, and you know, it really permeates even into you know, culture, in the sense of, you know, I know you're out on the West Coast, but I'm here in DC, and you know, we've kind of begotten this culture of, it's cool to be busy.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody says, "Oh, how you doing?" You'll say, "Oh, I'm slammed.
Yeah.
I'm just so busy." And if you responded otherwise, you would be a loser, right? You know, how can you not be busy?
Right.
So, you know, we need brave soldiers to really break that habit of being busy is not being successful. Being busy is something we should work against.
Right.
But Kendra is asking a couple questions, and I think it seems like Kendra's been hanging out with my kid as well here. So she's saying, wondering if you know any excellent relaxing techniques for children, particularly those with sensory issues or ADHD, or even for the parents of those kids. Amen to that, Kendra. You got anything for us struggling parents there, Brian?
Yeah, so I can't speak on raising kids because I don't have any at the point. But one tool that came to mind is an app called Headspace, and it's basically like a personal trainer for your brain. So it kind of allows you to get objective with the rushing thoughts or all of the stresses that come through your life. We can link it up here, but it's a super simple way to kind of get control over the fast pace, the stresses, or any of the problems going on in your life. Because I know our minds can run amok, and then we start chasing those thoughts, and then it's just like a cycle. If we want to link that up, we can. It's just basically a personal trainer for your brain to kind of pull back and look at your thoughts. Headspace.com. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'll put the link up in case anybody wants it. That'll be up in a second. That's an Android app?
Android or Apple, either one.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. That should be on the bottom left of the screen if anybody wants to check that out. We want to give Peter one more shot. If there's, I know we're kind of over our time here. We like to stay within 30 minutes, but Brian's given us some good stuff. Unless anyone has any other questions, I was actually going to just first off thank Brian. I always appreciate sitting down, and I love talking with Brian. If there's 0 people in the room, or there's 1 million people in the room, I love sitting down with him and kind of sharing, and look forward to doing more of that. And the next thing I was going to say is actually we're trying to do something special for May. So what we've been doing is a monthly blabs here at Hope. We started that at the beginning of the year, 2016. And what we were doing is the last Wednesday of every month, we would do a blab on Wednesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. So for this month, for the month of May, we actually want to do weekly blab. So we want to do a weekly blab on Wednesday nights and basically get people more engaged, because this month is going to be a very, very, very important month for the organization. And we are actually launching our biggest campaign, our biggest undertaking yet. And we're actually going to be launching that this coming Tuesday. And actually, I just put the link up on the bottom left-hand part of the screen. We are going to be launching a massive national campaign. And to celebrate that national campaign, and to celebrate the effort we'll be doing, we want to do these weekly blabs. So I encourage everyone to check out the link at the bottom of the left hand of their screen. You'll see the link for the campaign. It's called Run for Hope, and we'll be starting it this Tuesday with a Kickstarter campaign, and we'll be sending out all of the information for that. So make sure you're following us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of our social media accounts, as well as our website. We'll be blasting a ton of stuff out, so we want everyone to get on board with this. We got a great video. Even Brian makes an appearance on that nice video. And it's going to be a great campaign and a great effort to do something amazing for children in local communities out in DC and Los Angeles. And to top everything off, next Wednesday, we're actually going to be joined on the blab with Levi and Mandy Risk. And Levi Risk, for those of you who don't know, is the volunteer that will be running 3,000 miles across the United States starting on September 10th to raise funds for pediatric mobile health clinics that will be operating in DC and LA. So Levi is a world-renowned ultra-marathon runner, and he volunteered very graciously to take on this unbelievable task of running across America with the Hope Association. So him and his wife will be joining us next week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. So not 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll kind of do a little favor for our East Coast people that stay up late. We're going to do 8:30 p.m. Eastern time next week. Levi and Mandy will be joining us, and we'll be talking about everything. We'll talk about the campaign. We'll talk about how Levi's training for it, how Mandy is preparing for it, all the different stuff that they got going on. So make sure that you check back with us and again, are following us on social media next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. Sounds good, everyone? I appreciate everyone tuning in. We're going to put this on YouTube tomorrow because I know a lot of people weren't able to make it tonight. So keep on following us. And thank you, Brian, once again for your time tonight.
Hey, thanks, Steve. It was an honor.
Thanks, Brian. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.